The heavy rain of Chicago beat against the stained glass windows of the church, but inside it was dead silent. Ngozi stood at the altar in a white dress that weighed 20 pounds. Her hands shook so badly that the white flowers in her bouquet were vibrating. She stared at the man standing across from her. Marcus, the man she was supposed to love for the rest of her life. He was backing away from her. His face was pale and covered in sweat. He kept looking at his phone, then at the front doors, then back at her. He looked like a trapped rat. "Marcus," Ngozi whispered. Her voice sounded tight and dry. "What are you doing? The priest is waiting." "I can't do this," Marcus said. His voice echoed off the high ceiling. A loud gasp came from the front row where Ngozi's mother sat. The 300 guests behind them started to shift in their wooden seats. People were whispering. The sound of their gossip buzzed like angry bees. Ngozi felt her heart drop into her stomach. "What do you mean you can't do this? We are at the altar. You are acting crazy. Just take my hand." Marcus took another step back. He looked disgusted. "I said I can't do it, Ngozi. Look at you. You are nothing. I don't want to be tied to a broke woman with a dead-end job. I only stayed this long because I felt sorry for you. You're just a joke to me." He said it loud enough for the first 5 rows to hear every single word. Ngozi stopped breathing. A cold numbness spread through her chest. This was a nightmare. He was humiliating her in front of her family, his rich friends, and everyone they knew. Tears burned her eyes, ruining the makeup she had spent 3 hours getting done. She felt naked, stupid, and completely broken. Marcus turned around to run down the side aisle. Before he could take 3 steps, the massive oak doors at the back of the church slammed open. The loud bang sounded like a gunshot. The wind howled into the church, blowing cold rain across the red carpet. The whispering stopped instantly. A group of 5 men walked inside. They wore dark, expensive suits. They looked dangerous, the kind of men who didn't care about God or churches. At the front of the group walked a tall Korean man. His black hair was slightly wet from the rain. He wore a long black coat. His eyes were cold, dark, and empty. He walked down the center aisle with slow, heavy steps. His wet shoes squeaked quietly on the floor. Marcus stopped running. He froze like a deer in headlights. His face went from pale to chalk white. His knees started to shake. The tall man stopped at the front of the church. He did not look at the guests. He did not look at the priest. He stared right at Marcus. "Going somewhere, Marcus?" the man asked. His voice was deep and smooth, with a slight accent that made the words sound sharp. "Mr. Kang," Marcus choked out. He raised his hands up like he was surrendering to the police. "I swear to God, I have the money. I just need 2 more days. I was going to leave town to get it for you. Please." The man, Kang Min-ho, tilted his head. He finally looked away from the pathetic, shaking groom. He turned his dark eyes to Ngozi. He looked at her ruined makeup, her shaking hands, and the tears spilling down her dark cheeks. He looked back at Marcus and smiled. It was a cruel, mean smile. "You owe me $2 million, Marcus," Min-ho said loudly. "You plan to run away and leave your bride here to face the shame? That is sad." Min-ho stepped right up to the altar. He stood next to Ngozi. He looked down at her, his eyes tracing the line of her jaw. Then he looked at the priest. "I will marry her instead." If you are enjoying this video, please leave a like right now, as it helps the algorithm push more videos like this to you. Let us know down in the comments where you are watching from today, and listen to me carefully. If you don't hit that subscribe button for Afro Korean Love FM right now, you might leave Ngozi to face this humiliating wedding disaster all by herself. She is standing there broken, surrounded by people who are laughing at her pain. Don't be the reason she loses hope and gets crushed by her piece of shit ex-fiancé. Subscribe now to save her and find out what happens next. The priest opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at the Bible in his hands, then at Min-ho, then at the 4 scary men standing at the end of the aisle. The church was so quiet you could hear the rain hitting the roof. Ngozi blinked, trying to clear the tears from her eyes. She stared at the tall man standing next to her. She thought she was losing her mind. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice cracking. Min-ho turned his whole body to face her. He stepped into her personal space. He smelled like cold rain, expensive leather, and something spicy. "I said, I will marry you, right now." "You are crazy," Ngozi whispered. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I don't even know who the fuck you are." "My name is Kang Min-ho," he said. He didn't even care that she just cursed in a church. And the man you were about to marry is a cowardly piece of shit who owes me a lot of money. He was going to leave you here to look like a fool. He told everyone you are nothing. Min-ho reached out. His large, warm hand grabbed her chin. He held her face gently but firmly, forcing her to look into his eyes. Do you want to run out the back door and cry in the bathroom while these people laugh at you? Or do you want to show that bastard that you don't need him? Ngozi's chest heaved. She hated Marcus. She hated him so much in this moment that it felt like a fire burning inside her ribs. She looked past Min-ho's shoulder and saw Marcus. He was shaking, crying, literally dropping to his knees. One of Min-ho's men walked over and grabbed Marcus by the back of his neck, holding him in place. Please, Mr. Kang, Marcus begged, sobbing loudly. Take the car, take the house, don't do this. She doesn't have anything to do with my debts. Min-ho didn't even look at him. Shut the fuck up, Marcus, he said calmly. He kept his eyes on Ngozi. Well, make a choice. Cry like a little girl or stand tall and marry me. Ngozi felt a dangerous thrill shoot through her blood. She knew she was making a terrible mistake. This man was a criminal. He was dangerous. But the thought of leaving Marcus crying on the floor while she walked away with a billionaire mafia boss was too sweet to pass up. She wanted to hurt Marcus. She wanted to destroy his ego the same way he just tried to destroy hers. Okay, Ngozi whispered. Min-ho's eyes flashed with surprise, but he quickly hid it. He let go of her chin and turned to the priest. Read the damn book. Skip to the end. The I do part. The older priest was sweating now. He adjusted his glasses. Sir, I cannot. This is a holy place. We need a marriage license and... One of the men in dark suits at the back stepped forward. He reached inside his jacket and pulled it back just enough to show the black handle of a gun tucked into his belt. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the priest. The priest swallowed hard. He flipped the pages of his Bible so fast they almost tore. Do you, Kang Min-ho, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, Min-ho said. His voice was steady and loud. And do you? The priest looked at Ngozi, forgetting her name in his panic. Ngozi, she said. Her voice was shaking again, but she forced herself to stand straight. Do you, Ngozi, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? The priest rushed out. Ngozi looked at Marcus. He was staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. He shook his head slowly, mouthing the word no. She looked him right in the eyes and smiled a mean, hard smile. I do, she said loudly. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. The priest rushed out, closing the book. You may kiss the bride. Min-ho didn't hesitate. He stepped close to her. He didn't grab her waist or try to be romantic. He just tilted his head down and pressed his lips hard against hers. His lips were slightly cold from the outside air, but firm. It wasn't a sweet kiss. It was a claim. It was him marking his territory right in front of the man who owed him money. Ngozi froze for a second, then closed her eyes. She didn't kiss him back, but she didn't push him away either. He pulled back a second later. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a heavy gold ring. It belonged on a man's pinky finger, not a woman's ring finger, but he slid it onto her left hand anyway. It hung loosely around her skin. Let's go, Min-ho said. He grabbed her hand. His grip was tight. Wait, Ngozi said. My mom. Your mom can walk herself home. We are leaving, Min-ho snapped. He didn't care about her family. He pulled her down the steps of the altar. They walked down the center aisle together. The guests were completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody took out their phones to record. They were all too scared. Ngozi kept her head held high as they passed Marcus. He was still on his knees, sobbing into his hands. One of Min-ho's men kicked Marcus hard in the ribs as they walked past, making the groom cry out in pain. Ngozi didn't even flinch. She felt glad. They pushed through the heavy wooden doors and walked out into the freezing Chicago storm. The rain instantly soaked her white dress. The cold wind bit into her bare shoulders. A massive black SUV with dark tinted windows was waiting right outside the church steps. The engine was running. Another man in a suit opened the back door. Get in, Min-ho told her. Ngozi gathered the heavy, wet fabric of her dress and climbed up into the large back seat. The leather was cold. Min-ho climbed in right behind her and slammed the door shut. The noise of the rain and the storm was instantly cut off. Inside the car, it was quiet and smelled like leather and expensive air freshener. The driver put the car in gear and sped away from the curb. The tires splashed through deep puddles. Ngozi sat stiffly against the door. The adrenaline was starting to wear off. The anger that had made her say, "I do," was fading, leaving behind a cold, sharp panic. What the hell did she just do? She just married a gangster. She just got into a car with a man who collected millions of dollars in debts and made people cry on their knees. She looked down at the massive gold ring slipping around her wet finger. "Here," Minho said. He tossed a dry white towel onto her lap. "Dry your face, you look like a mess." Ngozi grabbed the towel. She pressed it to her cheeks, wiping away the black streaks of mascara. She took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking again. She looked over at him. He was leaning back in his seat, typing something on his phone. He looked completely relaxed, like he hadn't just hijacked a wedding and forced a woman to marry him. "Where are we going?" Ngozi asked. Her voice sounded small in the big car. Minho didn't look up from his phone. "Home," he said simply. "My apartment is on the south side," she said. "You can just drop me off there. You proved your point to Marcus. You scared him. We can get this annulled tomorrow." Minho finally stopped typing. He slowly turned his head to look at her. The streetlights outside flashed across his face, making his sharp jaw and dark eyes look even more dangerous. He let out a low, dark laugh. It didn't sound happy. It sounded like a warning. "You think this was a joke?" he asked softly. "You think I stopped a wedding just to scare a small-time loser like Marcus?" Ngozi swallowed hard. "Then why did you do it?" Minho leaned closer to her. The space between them felt very small now. "Marcus owes me money. He couldn't pay. So I took his most valuable asset. You are my wife now, Ngozi. You belong to me until his debt is paid. And trust me, you are not going back to your little apartment." Ngozi's heart started to beat so fast she thought she might pass out. "I am not an asset. I am a person. You can't just keep me." "I can do whatever the hell I want," Minho said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You agreed to this. You said, 'I do.' You used me to save your pride in there. Now you pay the price for my help. Welcome to your new life." He leaned back in his seat and looked out the window. "Driver, take us to the estate, and lock the doors." The heavy click of the child locks snapping into place echoed through the car. Ngozi grabbed the door handle and pulled it. It was completely locked. She was trapped. The rain pounded against the tinted glass as the SUV sped into the dark, wet city. The car rode in total silence for 20 minutes. The only sound was the heavy rain hitting the metal roof and the steady hum of the tires on the wet road. Ngozi sat pushed against the locked door. The cold air from the air conditioner blew right onto her wet skin. Her white wedding dress was soaked. The heavy fabric clung to her legs like a cold, wet blanket. She started to shiver. Her teeth clicked together softly. She tried to stop it by biting her bottom lip, but her whole body was shaking. She turned her head slowly to look at the man sitting next to her. Kang Min-ho, her husband. The word made her stomach feel sick. He was not looking at her. He had his elbows resting on his knees and he was typing fast on his phone. The bright light from the screen lit up his face in the dark car. He had a sharp jaw, a straight nose, and dark hair that fell slightly into his eyes. He looked completely calm. He did not look like a man who just kidnapped a bride from a church. He looked like a man answering boring work emails. Ngozi looked down at her left hand. The heavy gold ring he had shoved onto her finger caught the light from the passing street lamps. It was way too big. It had some kind of animal carved into the top, maybe a tiger or a dragon. It felt heavy and wrong. She could not take the silence anymore. The quiet was making her crazy. "Are you going to keep me locked in a basement?" she asked. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to speak loud. Minho did not stop typing. He did not even look up. "No, my basements are for business. They are dirty. You would not like it." His voice was so casual. It made a cold chill run down Ngozi's spine. "Then, what are you going to do with me? You can't just hold me hostage. People saw you take me. My mother saw you. There were 300 people in that church." Minho finally hit send on his phone. He locked the screen and threw the phone onto the leather seat next to him. He slowly turned his head and looked at her. His dark eyes moved up and down her shivering body. 300 people saw you willingly say, 'I do,'" Minho said slowly. 300 people saw you walk down the aisle with me. Nobody forced you into this car, Ngozi. You did it because you wanted to hurt Marcus. You wanted to ruin him. That doesn't mean I want to be your prisoner, she yelled. She felt a sudden burst of anger. I want to go home. I have a job. I have a cat. I have a life. Your life is on pause, Minho said. He leaned back against the seat and crossed his arms over his chest. Let me explain this to you very simply so your small brain can understand. Your ex-fiancé, Marcus, is a gambling addict. He came to my casino 3 months ago. He lost all his money. Then he borrowed money from my men. He lost that too. Then he signed a paper saying he would pay me back $2 million with interest. Ngozi felt the air leave her lungs. $2 million. She knew Marcus liked to play poker with his friends, but she had no idea it was this bad. He works at a car dealership, she whispered. He doesn't have $2 million. I know, Minho said. He smiled, but it was a cold, mean smile. Marcus thought he was smart. He thought he could run away to Mexico after he married you. He was going to take the wedding gift money, steal your savings, and run. I have men watching him. I knew his whole plan. He is a dumb piece of shit. Ngozi closed her eyes. The truth hit her like a punch to the stomach. Marcus wasn't just leaving her because he didn't love her. He was leaving her because his plan fell apart. He was going to steal from her. He was going to leave her with nothing. She remembered the shared bank account they opened last week. She had put $10,000 in it for their honeymoon. That broke bitch, Ngozi muttered out loud without thinking. Minho let out a short, dark laugh. It was a low sound that filled the car. Yes, he is a broke bitch, and a coward. When I walked into that church, he was ready to sell you to me just to save his own skin. You kicked him while he was on the ground, Ngozi said, opening her eyes. I should have put a bullet in his head, Minho replied. His voice was flat and serious. But killing him does not get me my money, so I took you. You are my insurance policy. How? Ngozi asked, her voice rising. I don't have $2 million. I work as a teller at Chase Bank. I make $40,000 a year. You don't need to pay me, Minho said. He leaned closer to her. She could smell his cologne again. It smelled expensive and dangerous. Marcus loves his image. He loves pretending to be a big man. Knowing that a real boss took his woman, married her, and is keeping her in his bed. That will drive him crazy. He will make a mistake. He will try to come get you to save his pride. And when he does, my men will catch him, and we will find out where he hid the money he stole from his boss. Ngozi felt her heart hammering against her ribs. And if he never comes, if he just runs away. Minho's eyes got very dark. Then you stay with me until I get bored, and I don't get bored very easily. The SUV suddenly slowed down. Ngozi looked out the window. They were out of the city now. The streetlights were gone. The road was surrounded by tall, dark trees that moved violently in the storm. The car turned onto a private road and stopped in front of massive black iron gates. A man wearing a heavy yellow rain jacket stepped out of a small guard booth. He was holding a large black rifle strapped to his chest. He shined a bright flashlight into the front seat of the SUV. The driver rolled down his window just enough to show his face. The guard nodded, turned off the flashlight, and pushed a button. The big iron gates slowly swung open. Where are we? Ngozi asked. Her mouth felt very dry. My house, Minho said. The car drove up a long, winding driveway. The trees were so thick it felt like driving through a dark tunnel. Finally, the trees cleared and Ngozi saw the house. It was huge. It looked more like a hotel or a museum than a place where someone lived. It was made of gray stone. The windows were tall and dark. There were no lights on the outside. It looked cold and dead. The SUV stopped right in front of the huge wooden double doors. The driver quickly got out, opened an umbrella, and opened Minho's door. Minho stepped out into the rain. He did not wait for Ngozi. He did not offer her a hand. He just walked up the stone steps to the front door. The other man in a suit, the one who had been in the front passenger seat, opened Ngozi's door. He did not have an umbrella for her. Get out, he said roughly. Ngozi grabbed the heavy, wet skirt of her wedding dress and pulled herself out of the car. The freezing rain hit her bare shoulders immediately. The wind whipped her hair across her face. She practically ran up the stone steps to get out of the storm. Minho pushed the heavy front door open and walked inside. Ngozi followed right behind him. The inside of the house was just as cold and scary as the outside. The floor was made of shiny black marble. The ceiling was incredibly high, with a massive crystal chandelier hanging in the center. The lights were on, but they felt dim. The walls were painted a dark gray. There were no pictures, no flowers, no signs of life. It felt like a tomb. An older Asian woman was standing in the middle of the foyer. She wore a simple black dress and a white apron. Her gray hair was pulled back into a tight bun. She kept her hands folded in front of her. She looked at Min-ho and bowed deeply. Min-ho took off his wet black coat and threw it at the woman. She caught it without making a sound. He spoke to her in rapid Korean. His voice was sharp and commanding. The woman nodded once, keeping her eyes on the floor. Ngozi stood near the door, hugging herself. She was dripping wet. Water was running down her legs and forming a large puddle on the black marble floor. She felt completely out of place. She felt like a piece of trash that someone had dragged inside. Min-ho turned around and looked at her. He pointed a long finger at the floor around her feet. "Look at what you are doing. You are ruining the floor." Ngozi felt her anger spike again. "I just got dragged through a fucking hurricane, and you are worried about your floor." The old woman gasped softly and looked up at Ngozi with wide eyes. Nobody spoke to Min-ho like that. Min-ho's face did not change. He walked slowly toward her. His wet shoes clicked loudly on the marble. He stopped right in front of her. He was so tall she had to tip her head back to look at his face. "Do not curse at me in my own house," he said softly. The quiet way he said it was way scarier than if he had yelled. "I told you, you are here to pay a debt. You are not a guest. You will follow my rules." "I am not a dog," Ngozi said, but her voice cracked. She hated that she was crying again. The tears mixed with the rainwater on her face. "You cannot just order me around." Min-ho reached out. His hand was quick. He grabbed a handful of her wet wedding dress right at her collarbone. He pulled her forward. She stumbled over her high heels and bumped hard into his solid chest. She let out a small gasp of surprise. "I can do whatever the hell I want," he whispered right into her ear. His breath was warm against her freezing skin. "I own you right now. I own this dress, I own that fake hair on your head, and I own every breath you take until I say you can go." He let go of her dress and pushed her back slightly. Ngozi caught her balance, her chest heaving. She was terrified, but she refused to look away from his dark eyes. Min-ho looked at the old woman. "Mrs. Lee, take her upstairs. Strip that stupid wet dress off her. Throw it in the trash. Give her some dry clothes and lock her in the guest room at the end of the hall." "Yes, Mr. Kang," Mrs. Lee said in heavily accented English. She stepped forward and gestured to the grand staircase. "Please, miss, follow me." Ngozi looked at Min-ho. "You are going to lock me in." "It is a big house," Min-ho said, turning his back on her. He started walking toward a set of large double doors down the hall. "I do not want you wandering around and touching my things. Go with Mrs. Lee. If you try to run, my guards outside will shoot you. They do not care that you are wearing white." He opened the doors and walked into a dark room, shutting the doors loudly behind him. Ngozi stood frozen in the foyer. The water continued to drip from her dress, hit the floor, and echo in the quiet space. She was completely trapped. She looked at the front door. It was solid oak and probably weighed 300 pounds. Outside, men with guns were walking in the rain. "Miss, please," Mrs. Lee said gently, but her eyes were firm. "Do not make him angry. It is very bad when he is angry. Come." Ngozi swallowed the hard lump in her throat. She gathered her heavy, ruined dress in her cold hands and started to walk up the massive marble stairs. Each step felt like a mile. She was leaving her old life behind and walking straight into a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The marble stairs felt like ice under Ngozi's bare feet. She had lost her white high heels somewhere between the dark SUV and the heavy front doors, but she did not even care. Every step she took left a small, wet footprint on the shiny black stone. Mrs. Lee walked 3 steps ahead of her. The older woman moved completely silently, like a ghost floating through the dark house. Ngozi hugged her arms tight across her chest, trying to stop her teeth from chattering. The air conditioning in this massive house was turned down so low it felt like a meat freezer. The wet, 20-pound wedding dress felt like a trap pulling her down to the floor. "Where is everyone?" Ngozi asked. Her voice bounced loudly off the high walls of the empty stairwell. "Does he live in this huge place all by himself?" Mrs. Lee did not turn around, she just kept climbing the stairs at a steady pace. "Mr. Kang likes it quiet," she said. Her English was a little broken, but her voice was clear. Many men outside with guns, they watched the gates. Inside, only me and Mr. Kang, and now you. Ngozi looked up at the ceiling. There were no family pictures on the gray walls. There were no warm rugs on the floor. There were no flowers or signs of a normal life, just cold stone, dark wood, and heavy shadows. It felt like a very expensive prison. They reached the top of the stairs and walked down a long, dark hallway. The floor up here was covered in a thick gray carpet that swallowed the sound of their footsteps. There were 6 doors on the left and 6 on the right. All of them were shut tight. Mrs. Lee walked all the way to the very end of the hall and opened the last door on the right. She reached inside and flipped a light switch. Ngozi stepped into the room and stopped. The room was the size of a small house. In the middle sat a massive bed with dark gray sheets and a black metal frame. There was a large leather couch in the corner and a flat-screen TV on the wall. A huge window took up the entire back wall. Outside the window, the Chicago rain was coming down in thick, angry sheets, beating against the thick glass. "Take it off," Mrs. Lee said. Ngozi blinked and looked at the older woman. "What?" "The dress," Mrs. Lee said, pointing a thin finger at Ngozi's chest. "It is ruined. It is dripping dirty water on the clean floor. Take it off right now." Ngozi felt a hot flush of shame hit her cheeks. She was freezing, tired, and scared, but she did not want to strip in front of a stranger. But Mrs. Lee just stood there, waiting with a blank look on her face. She was not leaving. Ngozi swallowed hard. Her hands were shaking violently as she reached around to her back. She grabbed the small silver zipper of the wedding dress and pulled it down. The wet fabric stuck to her skin like glue. She had to peel the heavy dress off her shoulders and push it down her hips. The dress fell to the carpet with a wet, heavy slapping sound. Ngozi stood there in just her white underwear and a strapless bra. Goosebumps covered her dark skin. She crossed her arms over her chest, feeling completely exposed and stupid. Mrs. Lee looked down at the pile of wet white fabric. She kicked it with the toe of her black shoe. "Trash," the old woman muttered. "I will throw it in the garbage." Mrs. Lee walked over to a dark wooden dresser. She opened a drawer and pulled out a pair of gray sweatpants and a black hooded sweatshirt. She walked back and shoved the clothes into Ngozi's shaking hands. "Bathroom is through that door," Mrs. Lee said, pointing to a dark wooden door on the left side of the room. "Wash yourself, get warm, then I bring you some food. Do not leave this room." Before Ngozi could say a single word, Mrs. Lee turned around, picked up the heavy, wet wedding dress from the floor, and walked out into the hallway. The heavy bedroom door clicked shut. A second later, Ngozi heard a loud, sharp metal sound. Click! Ngozi dropped the dry clothes on the bed and ran to the door. She grabbed the silver handle and pulled it hard. It did not move. She twisted it left, then right, nothing. She pushed her shoulder against the heavy wood, but it was like pushing against a brick wall. She was locked in. "Hey," Ngozi yelled, slamming her open hands against the door. "Hey, you can't lock me in here. Let me out." Nobody answered. The hallway outside was dead quiet. The only sound in the room was the loud storm beating against the window. Ngozi rested her forehead against the cold wood of the door. A loud sob ripped out of her throat. She slid down the door until she hit the floor, pulling her knees up to her chest. She cried hard. She cried because her feet were freezing. She cried because her $2,000 wedding dress was in the trash. She cried because the man she loved for 3 years was a lying, stealing piece of shit who left her to deal with a mafia boss. She sat on the floor for 10 minutes, just crying until her chest hurt and her eyes burned. Finally, the cold air in the room forced her to move. She needed to get warm. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, stood up, and grabbed the dry clothes from the bed. The bathroom was bigger than her entire apartment back in the South Side. The floor was made of black stone, but it was heated from underneath. The warmth felt amazing on her freezing feet. The shower was a huge glass box with 3 different shower heads. Ngozi turned the silver handles. Steam instantly filled the air. She stripped off her wet underwear and stepped into the hot water. She stood under the heavy spray for a long time. She let the hot water wash away the crusty, ruined makeup on her face. She scrubbed her skin hard with a bar of expensive white soap until she felt clean. The hot water helped stop her shaking, but it did not wash away the tight, heavy panic sitting in her stomach. She turned the water off, wrapped herself in a huge white towel, and dried off quickly. She put on the clothes Mrs. Lee had given her. The gray sweatpants were way too long, so she had to roll the waist down 3 times. The black hoodie swallowed her upper body. It smelled like clean laundry detergent and a very faint hint of the spicy cologne Minho wore. The smell made her stomach flip. She pulled the strings of the hood tight and walked back out into the bedroom. She walked over to the giant window and looked out into the night. It was completely dark outside, except for the bright yellow security lights shining down on the grounds. The rain was blowing sideways in the wind. Through the heavy rain, Ngozi could see the high stone walls surrounding the property. Near the front gates, 2 men wearing dark rain ponchos were walking slowly. One of them was holding the leash of a massive black dog. The dog looked like a wolf. "Fuck me," Ngozi whispered to the glass. She leaned her head against the cold window. There was no way out. If she somehow broke the window and climbed down the side of the house, those men would catch her before she even made it to the wall. Minho was right. Her life was on pause. She was trapped here until Marcus paid a debt he could never afford. An hour passed. Ngozi paced back and forth across the thick gray carpet. She counted her steps, 20 steps from the window to the door, 20 steps back. Her mind was racing. She needed a phone. She needed to call her mother. Her mother was probably at the police station right now, crying, filing a kidnapping report. Would the police even come out here? Minho acted like he owned the whole city. He probably owned the police too. Suddenly, she heard heavy footsteps in the hallway outside. They were not the soft, quiet steps of Mrs. Lee. They were heavy and slow. Ngozi stopped pacing. She stood perfectly still in the middle of the room. Her heart started to pound hard against her ribs. The lock clicked loudly. The handle turned, and the heavy door swung inward. Kang Minho walked into the room. He had changed out of his wet suit. He was wearing dark blue jeans and a tight black t-shirt that showed off the thick muscles in his arms and chest. His black hair was still a little damp, falling into his dark eyes. He was holding a silver tray in one hand. He kicked the door shut behind him. He did not lock it this time, but he stood blocking the only way out. He looked at Ngozi. His eyes slowly traveled up and down her body, taking in the baggy sweatpants and the oversized hoodie. He did not smile. He walked over to a small glass table near the couch and set the silver tray down. "Sit," Minho said. His voice was deep and flat. Ngozi did not move. She kept her feet planted firmly on the floor. "I want my phone." Minho turned around to face her. He crossed his thick arms over his chest. "Your phone was in a little white purse that you left on a chair at the church. It is gone. Sit down and eat." Ngozi looked at the tray. There was a large bowl of hot soup, some white rice, and a glass of water. Her stomach growled loudly, betraying her, but she was too angry to care. "I am not hungry. I want to use your phone. I need to call my mother. She saw you take me. She is going to call the cops." Minho let out a short, harsh laugh. It sounded like a bark. "Let her call them. The Chicago police work for me. If they get a report about a missing bride, they will throw it in the trash. Nobody is coming to get you, Ngozi. Sit down." "Stop telling me what to do," Ngozi yelled. The anger finally exploded out of her. She took 2 fast steps toward him. "You can't just take people. I don't give a shit how much money Marcus owes you. I am not a television you can just steal to pay off a debt. I am a human being." Minho did not back away. He dropped his arms to his sides and took 1 large step forward, closing the distance between them. He was so much taller than her. He looked down into her angry eyes. The amusement was gone from his face. He looked dangerous again. "You think you are so loud and brave," Minho said softly. "You think yelling at me will make me feel bad and let you go. You do not understand how my world works." He reached out fast. His large hand grabbed her by the shoulder of her hoodie. He pulled her hard against his chest. Ngozi gasped and pushed her hands against his solid stomach, trying to back away. He did not let go. His grip was like iron. "Marcus signed a paper," Minho whispered, leaning his face down close to hers. "He offered his assets if he could not pay. When a man runs from his debt, I take what he loves. I take his car, I take his house, and I take his woman. That is the rule of the street. You agreed to marry me. You put the ring on your finger. You are my wife under the law, and you are my property under the rules of my business." I hate you, Ngozi spat, staring right into his dark eyes. You are a monster. I am a businessman, Minho corrected her. He let go of her shoulder and took a step back, smoothing out the front of his black shirt. And right now, it is bad for my business if my new wife starves to death on her first night in my house. Eat the soup. Ngozi glared at him. She wanted to grab the bowl of hot soup and throw it right at his face. She wanted to run at the door and try to fight her way out. But she looked at his thick arms, his cold eyes, and remembered the men with guns outside. If she fought him, she would lose. If she starved herself, she would only get weak. She needed her strength if she was ever going to find a way out of this hell. She turned away from him, walked over to the leather couch, and sat down heavily. She pulled the tray close to her and picked up the silver spoon. Her hand was shaking with anger as she scooped up some broth and put it in her mouth. It tasted like chicken and ginger. It was warm and actually really good, but she chewed on a piece of chicken like it was cardboard. Minho watched her for a moment. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. Good girl, he said quietly. I will be in my office down the hall. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, your new life officially begins. He turned his back on her, walked out the door, and pulled it shut. The heavy click of the lock sliding into place echoed through the massive room. Ngozi stopped eating. She stared at the locked wooden door, her mind already spinning, trying to figure out how to survive the man who had just bought her life. Ngozi stood completely still until the sound of Minho's heavy footsteps faded away down the long hallway. She looked down at the silver tray on the glass table. The soup was still steaming. Her stomach twisted, letting out another loud growl. She wanted to be strong. She wanted to smash the bowl against the wall just to show him she was not his pet. But she was so tired, and she was so hungry. If she wanted to fight her way out of this huge house, she could not do it on an empty stomach. She sat back down on the leather couch. She picked up the silver spoon and started to eat. The hot broth burned her throat a little, but the warmth felt amazing inside her freezing body. She ate the chicken and the white rice. She scraped the bowl completely clean. When she finished, she drank the whole glass of cold water. She stood up and walked over to the massive bed. The dark gray sheets looked perfectly smooth. She pulled the heavy blanket back and climbed in. The bed was so soft it felt like sinking into a cloud, but the sheets were cold. She pulled the blanket all the way up to her chin. She lay there in the dark, listening to the angry Chicago wind howl against the thick window glass. Her mind would not stop spinning. She thought about her mother. Her mother was probably sitting in the front pew of the church, crying, surrounded by police officers. She thought about Marcus, that stupid, selfish bastard. He was probably packing a bag right now, trying to run away to Mexico or Canada. He left her. He looked her right in the face and let another man drag her out the door. A hot tear slipped out of the corner of her eye and soaked into the expensive gray pillow. And then she thought about her cat, Buttercup. Buttercup was an orange tabby cat she had rescued 3 years ago. Who was going to feed Buttercup? The cat was locked in her small apartment on the south side. If she did not go home tomorrow, Buttercup would starve. Damn it, Ngozi whispered to the empty room. Damn it all to hell. She squeezed her eyes shut. She rolled over onto her side, hugging her knees to her chest. It took 2 hours, but finally, the sound of the rain and her own deep exhaustion pulled her into a dark, dreamless sleep. When Ngozi opened her eyes again, the room was bright. The storm was gone. The heavy rain had turned into a slow, gray drizzle. The morning light coming through the giant window made the dark bedroom look a little less scary. She sat up slowly. Her back and neck were stiff from sleeping curled up in a tight ball. Before she could even rub the sleep out of her eyes, she heard a sharp click. The lock on the heavy wooden door turned. Ngozi pulled the blanket up to her chest, her heart instantly beating faster. The door pushed open, and Mrs. Lee walked inside. The old woman looked exactly the same as last night, wearing her neat black dress and white apron. She carried a stack of clothes folded perfectly over her arm and a pair of black flat shoes in her hand. Good morning, Mrs. Lee said. Her face showed zero emotion. You sleep long. It is almost 10 o'clock. I was tired, Ngozi said. Her voice sounded thick and raspy. Mrs. Lee walked over to the foot of the bed and set the clothes down. She placed the black shoes neatly on the floor next to them. Mr. Kang is waiting for you downstairs in the dining room. He does not like to wait. Wash your face. Put these on. Come down. I want my own clothes, Ngozi said. She did not want to wear anything that belonged to that man. Mrs. Lee stopped and looked at her. Her dark eyes were hard. "Your dress is in the garbage truck. It is gone. These are your clothes now. Put them on, miss. Do not make him angry today." Mrs. Lee turned around and walked out of the room. She closed the door behind her, but this time, Ngozi did not hear the loud click of the lock. Ngozi let out a heavy breath. She threw the blanket off and swung her legs over the side of the bed. She walked over to the foot of the bed and looked at the clothes Mrs. Lee had left. It was a pair of dark blue jeans, a soft white sweater, and new underwear with the price tags still attached. The black flats on the floor looked like her exact size. A cold shiver went down her spine. How did he know her sizes? Did he have his men dig through her apartment last night? The thought of dangerous men with guns touching her things made her feel sick. She walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. She looked at herself in the big mirror above the sink. Her dark skin looked dull. Her eyes were puffy and red from crying. She looked like a complete mess. She grabbed a comb from the counter and pulled it through her thick, curly hair, trying to make it look decent. She went back into the bedroom and put on the clothes. The jeans fit perfectly around her waist and hips. The white sweater was incredibly soft, probably made of real cashmere. The black flats fit her feet exactly. She looked down at her left hand. The heavy gold ring with the carved animal on it was still sitting on her finger. It was too big, but it refused to slide off her knuckle easily. It was a heavy reminder that she was trapped. Ngozi took a deep breath, opened the bedroom door, and walked out into the long, quiet hallway. The house looked totally different in the daylight. The thick gray carpet looked expensive. The walls had large, beautiful paintings of dark forests and stormy oceans, but it still felt dead. There were no warm colors. She walked down the hall and stood at the top of the grand marble staircase. She could see out the massive front windows now. The high stone wall circled the entire property. She saw 3 men in dark suits standing near the front gate. They were drinking coffee, but she could clearly see the shape of guns hidden under their jackets. She walked down the stairs slowly, her soft shoes making no noise on the black marble. When she reached the bottom, a tall man in a suit stepped out of the shadows. It was the same man who had opened the car door for her last night. He had a small scar over his left eyebrow. "Dining room," the man said. He pointed down a wide hallway to the right. He did not say please. Ngozi ignored him and walked down the hall. She heard the soft clink of a coffee cup hitting a saucer. She followed the sound and stepped through a wide set of open double doors. The dining room was massive. A long, dark wood table sat in the center of the room. It was big enough to seat 20 people. Kang Min-ho sat at the very head of the table. He was wearing a crisp white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He wore a dark silver watch on his left wrist. He was holding a sleek black tablet in one hand and a white coffee cup in the other. He did not look up when she walked in. "Sit," Min-ho said. Ngozi walked to the other end of the long table. She pulled out a heavy wooden chair and sat down. She was as far away from him as she could get. Min-ho finally looked up. He set his tablet down on the table. He looked at the white sweater, the jeans, and her face. He gave a small, slow nod of approval. "Better. You look like a real person today, not a drowned rat." "How do you know my sizes?" Ngozi asked. She skipped right over saying good morning. "Where did those clothes come from?" Min-ho took a slow sip of his coffee. "I know everything about you, Ngozi. I had my men do a full background check on you the minute Marcus tried to offer you up to save his own life last week. You wear a size 8 in pants, a medium in shirts, and an 8 in shoes. I had Mrs. Lee buy a whole wardrobe for you this morning. Your closet upstairs will be full by the afternoon." Ngozi grabbed the edge of the heavy wooden table. Her knuckles turned light. "I don't want your clothes. I want to go home. I need to go to my apartment." Min-ho smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that did not reach his dark eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small set of keys. They were attached to a cheap plastic keychain shaped like a cat. Ngozi gasped. Those were her house keys. Min-ho tossed the keys onto the long table. They slid across the polished wood and stopped halfway down. "You don't have an apartment anymore," Min-ho said calmly. Ngozi stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "What the fuck did you do?" "Sit down," Min-ho commanded. His voice dropped low, carrying a dangerous warning. No, Ngozi yelled. What did you do to my apartment? My cat is in there. If you hurt Buttercup, I swear to God I will kill you. Minho sighed like he was dealing with an annoying child. He pressed a small button under the edge of the dining table. A few seconds later, Mrs. Lee walked into the room. She was carrying a large, plastic pet carrier. Inside the carrier, a fat orange tabby cat was meowing loudly. Buttercup, Ngozi cried out. She ran over to Mrs. Lee, dropped to her knees on the hard floor, and opened the carrier door. The orange cat walked out, rubbed its head against Ngozi's hand, and let out a long purr. Ngozi picked the heavy cat up and hugged him tight to her chest. She buried her face in his orange fur. She was so relieved she felt like she might cry again. Put the animal in the kitchen, Mrs. Lee, Minho said, looking disgusted. I don't want cat hair on my dining table. Ngozi stood up, still holding Buttercup tight. She looked at Minho. Why do you have my keys? Why is my cat here? Minho picked up his coffee cup again. Because I sent a team of men to your apartment at 5 o'clock this morning. They packed up all your important papers, your passport, your photos, and your pet. They put the rest of your cheap furniture in a storage unit. Then they handed the keys back to your landlord and paid the fee to break your lease. You do not live on the south side anymore. Ngozi's mouth dropped open. She could not breathe. He packed up her entire life in a few hours while she was sleeping. He erased her apartment like it was nothing. You can't do that. That is highly illegal. The landlord wouldn't just let strangers in. My men can be very convincing, Minho said smoothly. And money makes people blind. Your landlord was very happy to take $10,000 in cash to forget you ever lived there. I have a job, Ngozi yelled, her panic rising fast. I am supposed to be at the bank at 9 o'clock. They are going to call the police when I don't show up. Minho picked up his black tablet. He tapped the screen a few times. Chase Bank, branch number 4092. Manager is David Miller. I had one of my lawyers call Mr. Miller an hour ago. He told Mr. Miller that you suffered a severe mental breakdown at your wedding yesterday. He told him you are seeking private medical care and will not be returning to work. Your final paycheck is being mailed to a P.O. box. You do not have a job anymore, Ngozi. Ngozi slowly walked backward until her legs hit the heavy wooden chair. She sat down hard. Buttercup jumped out of her arms and started sniffing the table legs. She felt completely numb. He took her home. He took her job. He took her safe place. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Her voice was completely broken. Marcus owes you money, not me. Why are you destroying my whole life? Minho set his tablet down. He looked at her, and for the first time, his eyes did not look cruel. They just looked serious. I am not destroying your life. I am moving it. If I let you keep your little apartment and your little job at the bank, Marcus will find you. He will go to your house, cry on his knees, and beg you to hide him. Or worse, he will try to use you as a shield when my men finally corner him. Minho stood up from his chair. He was so tall he cast a long shadow across the polished table. He walked slowly down the side of the table until he was standing right next to her. Ngozi froze. She didn't dare move. Minho leaned down. He rested his large hands on the arms of her chair, trapping her inside. His face was only inches from hers. She could smell the mint on his breath mixed with the strong, dark coffee. You are my wife now, Minho said softly. You wear my ring. That makes you a target for every enemy I have in this city, and a target for your desperate ex-fiancé. You think you are safe at a bank teller window? You think a deadbolt lock on a cheap apartment door will keep you safe from the men in my world. He reached up and gently touched the side of her face. His long fingers brushed against her cheek. His touch was warm, but it made her skin prickle with fear. You stay here, Minho whispered. You live in my house. You eat my food. My guards will make sure nobody touches a single hair on your head. You belong to me until the debt is paid. Do you understand? Ngozi stared into his dark, bottomless eyes. She hated him. She hated him more than she hated Marcus. But she also realized how deeply trapped she was. Without her job, without her apartment, and without her money, she had nowhere to go. She was completely at his mercy. Yes, Ngozi whispered. Good, Minho said. He stood up straight and buttoned the top button of his shirt. He looked completely unbothered again. Eat some breakfast. Mrs. Lee is making eggs. I have business to take care of in the city today. Do not try to leave the house. My dogs outside are trained to attack anyone running toward the gates. I would hate to see your pretty face get ruined." He turned around and walked out of the dining room without looking back. Ngozi sat alone at the massive table. Buttercup meowed and jumped up onto her lap, purring loudly. Ngozi stroked the cat's orange fur. Her hands were shaking again. She looked down at the heavy gold ring on her finger. Minho had completely erased Ngozi, the bank teller. Now, she had to figure out how to survive as Mrs. Kang, the property of Chicago's most dangerous man. The quiet in the dining room was loud. It hurt her ears. Ngozi just sat there for 20 minutes after Minho left. She stared at the empty white coffee cup he had left on the table. There was a small brown stain of coffee on the rim. She wanted to smash the cup on the floor. She wanted to break something in this perfect, cold house. Buttercup let out a soft meow and dug his claws slightly into her jeans. The sharp pinch brought her back to reality. "I know, buddy," Ngozi whispered. She rubbed the top of his orange head. "You are probably hungry." She stood up and carried the heavy cat out of the dining room. She did not know where the kitchen was, so she just walked down the wide hallway. The house was like a museum. The floors were shiny marble, the walls were painted dark gray, and there was no mess anywhere. Not a single piece of mail on a table, no dirty shoes by the door. It felt completely dead. She pushed open a swinging wooden door at the end of the hall. The kitchen was massive. It looked like a kitchen in an expensive restaurant, not a home. Everything was silver stainless steel and white marble. Mrs. Lee was standing by the large sink, washing a pan. She did not look up when Ngozi walked in. "Excuse me," Ngozi said. Her voice sounded tired and weak. Mrs. Lee turned off the water and dried her hands on a white towel. "Yes, miss." "Do you have anything for my cat to eat? Mr. Kang brought him here, but he didn't bring his food bowls or anything." Mrs. Lee walked over to a tall white cabinet and opened it. Inside, there were 10 large bags of very expensive cat food. The kind Ngozi could never afford on her bank teller salary. There were also 2 brand new ceramic bowls, one for food and one for water. Ngozi felt a hot spike of anger in her chest. Minho really did plan everything. He knew he was going to kidnap her, and he ordered cat food before he even did it. It made her feel sick to her stomach. "Take these," Mrs. Lee said, holding out the heavy bowls. Ngozi put Buttercup down on the cold floor and took the bowls. She filled one with water from the sink and the other with the expensive dry food. She set them down in a corner. Buttercup immediately ran over and started eating loudly, ignoring his new strange surroundings. Ngozi leaned against the cold metal counter. She watched the old woman. Mrs. Lee went back to washing the heavy pan. "How long have you worked for him?" Ngozi asked. "A long time," Mrs. Lee said softly. She did not stop scrubbing. "Does he always do this?" Ngozi pushed harder. "Does he always kidnap women and trap them in his house?" Mrs. Lee stopped. She put the wet sponge down and turned around. Her dark eyes were very serious. "You are the first woman to live in this house. Mr. Kang does not bring people here. This is a private place. You are his wife. That is different." "I am not his wife," Ngozi spat. "It was a fake wedding. He forced me. He threatened the priest with a gun." "The paper says you are his wife," Mrs. Lee replied simply. "The gold ring is on your finger. That makes it real in his world. You need to be smart, miss. Do not fight him on everything. He is a very powerful man. Men outside fear him greatly. You should respect him." "I am not going to respect a man who stole my entire life," Ngozi said. Mrs. Lee just shook her head slowly. "You will learn, or you will be very unhappy. Go upstairs. Your new things are in your room." Ngozi wanted to yell at the old woman, but she knew it was pointless. Mrs. Lee was totally brainwashed, or maybe she was just scared too. Ngozi left the kitchen. She left Buttercup eating his food and walked back up the grand marble staircase. Her legs felt heavy. The gray drizzle outside made the high windows look dirty. The whole world felt gray and completely hopeless. She walked down the long, quiet hallway and opened the door to her bedroom. The bed was made perfectly. The dark gray sheets were pulled tight. She walked over to the closet door. It was a large walk-in closet. She grabbed the metal handle and pulled it open. Ngozi gasped out loud. When she woke up this morning, the closet had been completely empty. Now it was packed full. There were at least 40 dresses hanging on expensive wooden hangers. They were made of thick silk, soft cotton, and expensive wool. There were rows of soft cashmere sweaters folded perfectly on the bright white shelves. Below them, there were 10 pairs of brand new shoes. High heels, soft leather boots, and expensive running shoes. She reached out and touched a dark red silk dress. It felt like water running through her fingers. She looked at the small white price tag hanging from the sleeve. $2,400. Ngozi pulled her hand back fast like the dress was on fire. "Holy shit," she whispered. She looked at the next tag, a simple black sweater, $800. Minho had spent tens of thousands of dollars on her while she was sleeping. It was a clear, harsh message. He was showing her that he had endless money. He was showing her that he could replace everything she ever owned in a few hours without even blinking his eye. He wanted her to feel small and totally dependent on him, and it was working. She felt hot tears burning the back of her eyes, but she blinked them away. She was done crying. Crying did not fix anything. She needed to think. She needed a plan to survive this. She closed the closet door hard. The loud sound echoed in the quiet bedroom. She could not stay in this room. The walls felt like they were closing in on her. Ngozi turned and walked out of the bedroom. She needed to feel the outside air. She needed to see the sky, even if it was gray and raining. She walked down the long stairs and started exploring the ground floor of the giant house. She passed the big dining room, a massive library filled with old books, and a living room with a huge stone fireplace. At the back of the living room, there were large glass doors that led to an outdoor stone patio. The doors looked heavy. She grabbed the metal handle and pushed. To her surprise, it was unlocked. The heavy door swung open easily. The cold Chicago air hit her face instantly. It felt amazing. It smelled like wet dirt and clean rain. She stepped out onto the gray stone patio. The drizzle was light, but it made her white sweater slightly damp. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the fresh air. For a single second, she felt like a normal person again. Then a low, terrifying sound broke the quiet peace. It was a deep, rumbling growl. It sounded like a car engine starting inside a monster's chest. Ngozi froze completely. Her heart slammed hard against her ribs. She slowly turned her head to the left. Standing at the edge of the patio, right where the green grass met the gray stone, was a dog. But it was not a normal dog. It was a massive black cane corso. Its head was the size of a cinder block. Its thick muscles bunched under its short black fur. It was staring right at her. Its yellow eyes were locked directly on her face, and its thick black lips were pulled back to show long, sharp white teeth. The dog took one slow step forward. The deep growl got louder. "Don't move," a rough voice barked out from the dark. A tall man stepped out from behind a large green bush. He was wearing a dark waterproof jacket and holding a thick leather leash. He yanked hard on the leash, stopping the massive dog from taking another step. The man had a shaved head and a mean, flat face. He looked at Ngozi with zero respect in his eyes. "Get back inside," the guard said. He did not call her miss. He did not call her Mrs. Kang. He ordered her like she was a common trespasser. Ngozi swallowed hard. Her legs were shaking, but she forced herself to stand tall. "I just wanted some fresh air. I am standing on the patio. I am not trying to run away." The huge dog barked. It was a booming, deafening sound that echoed off the stone walls of the large house. Ngozi flinched hard, taking a quick step back toward the glass doors. The guard laughed. It was a short, cruel sound. "Zeus doesn't care if you want fresh air. He is trained to tear the throat out of anyone who isn't the boss. If I drop this leather leash right now, you are dead in 10 seconds. Get your ass back inside the house." Ngozi felt a hot rush of anger mix with her panic. "Do you know who I am? I am his wife." The guard looked her up and down slowly. He smirked. "I know exactly who you are. You are the collateral. You are just a debt payment. Now get inside before I let Zeus teach you a hard lesson." He loosened his tight grip on the leash just a tiny bit. The massive dog lunged forward instantly, snapping its heavy jaws in the air just 5 feet away from Ngozi's legs. Ngozi screamed a short, panicked scream. She stumbled backward, tripping over her own flat shoes, and fell hard onto the wet stone patio. Her hands scraped roughly against the cold, wet stone. The pain was sharp, but she scrambled backward quickly on her hands and knees until she was inside the living room. She grabbed the heavy glass door and slammed it shut. She twisted the metal lock until it clicked loudly in the quiet room. Outside, the bald guard laughed again. He pulled the massive dog back and walked away slowly into the rain, disappearing into the dark trees surrounding the house. Ngozi sat flat on the floor of the living room, her chest heaving up and down. She looked down at her hands. The palms were scraped bad and bleeding slightly. Small drops of bright red blood dotted her dark skin. She was shaking uncontrollably. Min-ho was not lying to her this morning. He was not exaggerating to scare her. The men outside were highly dangerous, and the dogs were literal monsters bred to kill. She was truly a prisoner trapped in a fortress. She slowly stood up. Her knees felt weak and shaky. She walked to the large stone fireplace and sat down on the hard edge of the hearth. The house was dead quiet again. She hugged her knees tightly to her chest. Hours passed by slowly. The gray light outside the tall windows slowly started to fade into dark blue. The sun was finally going down. Ngozi did not move a single inch. She did not go back to the warm kitchen to eat. She just sat there in the dark, staring at the empty fireplace, trying to figure out how to survive. Around 7 o'clock, she heard the heavy sound of the giant front doors opening. The loud sound echoed all the way down the hall into the living room. Heavy, wet footsteps clicked loudly against the marble floor of the foyer. Kang Min-ho was home. Ngozi's stomach tightened into a hard, painful knot. She heard him talking to Mrs. Lee in the hallway. His voice was low and commanding as usual. A minute later, the heavy footsteps started moving toward the living room. Min-ho walked into the dark room. He had taken off his wetsuit jacket and his expensive tie. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. He looked very tired, but his dark eyes were sharp as ever. He stopped dead in the middle of the room when he saw her sitting on the fireplace hearth in the dark. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" Min-ho asked. He reached over to a heavy lamp on a side table and clicked it on. The warm yellow light instantly filled the space. Ngozi squinted against the sudden bright light. She did not answer him. She just glared at him with pure, hot hatred. Min-ho walked closer. His dark eyes dropped down to her hands resting on her knees. He saw the scraped, bloody palms immediately. He stopped walking. His face changed instantly. The calm, tired look vanished. His sharp jaw tightened and his eyes got incredibly dark and dangerous. "What happened to your hands?" he asked. His voice was suddenly very quiet and very cold. "Nothing," Ngozi muttered. She tried to pull her white sweater sleeves down to cover her hands, but she was too slow. Min-ho crossed the room in 3 fast, long steps. He grabbed her left wrist. His grip was tight, but not painful. He pulled her hand up toward the yellow light to look closely at the fresh scrapes. "I asked you a question," Min-ho said, staring hard at the blood. "How did you hurt yourself in my house?" Ngozi tried to pull her hand away, but it was like trying to pull her arm out of a stone statue. "I fell down, okay? I went outside onto the patio, and your stupid guard let that monster dog jump at me. I fell backward." Min-ho's eyes slowly raised from her bloody hand to look at her face. The dead look in his eyes made the blood run completely cold in her veins. He did not look angry. He looked perfectly murderous. "Which guard?" Min-ho asked softly. "I don't know his name," Ngozi said. She was suddenly very scared of what he might do next. He had a shaved head. He was holding a huge black dog. Min-ho let go of her hand. He took 1 step back. He reached into his dark pants pocket, pulled out his expensive phone, and dialed a number fast. He put the phone to his ear. "Bring the bald guard holding Zeus to the front door," Min-ho said clearly into the phone. "Right now." He hung up and put the phone back in his pocket. He looked back at Ngozi. "Come with me." "No," Ngozi said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Min-ho did not argue with her. He reached down, grabbed her upper arm tightly, and pulled her off the hearth. He did not drag her, but he pulled her along with him fast toward the front of the house. "Let go of me," Ngozi yelled loudly, struggling hard against his grip, but he was way too strong. He walked her all the way down the hall to the massive wooden front doors. He pulled the doors open and dragged her out onto the covered front porch. The rain had finally stopped, but the night air was freezing cold. A minute later, 2 men in dark suits walked quickly up the wet driveway. Between them, they were pushing the bald guard. The bald guard did not look tough or mean anymore. He looked pale and very nervous. He was not holding the giant dog. The two men forced the bald guard to stop at the bottom of the porch steps. Min-ho let go of Ngozi's arm and stood right at the top of the stairs, looking down at the nervous man. "Mr. Kang," the bald guard said quickly, his voice shaking. "Sir, I was just doing my job. The girl tried to leave the house. I was securing the perimeter like you ordered." "Did you let the dog attack her?" Min-ho asked. His voice echoed clearly in the quiet night air. "No, sir. The dog just barked at her. She got scared and fell down like a stupid bitch." The exact second the words, "stupid bitch," left the man's mouth, the air around them seemed to freeze solid. Min-ho did not yell. He did not curse. He just slowly walked down the stone steps until he was standing face to face with the guard. Min-ho moved faster than Ngozi's eyes could follow. He pulled a black metal gun from the back of his waistband and smashed the heavy metal handle right across the bald guard's face. The sound of breaking bone was loud and totally sickening. The guard screamed in agony and fell to his knees on the wet driveway, holding his broken face. Bright red blood poured quickly through his fingers, staining his dark jacket. Ngozi gasped loudly and covered her mouth with both hands. She took a fast step back in pure horror. Min-ho stood tall over the bleeding man. He looked completely calm. "She is my wife," Min-ho said softly. "You do not disrespect her. You do not let my animals frighten her. You do not ever call her out of her name." The guard sobbed on the wet ground, spitting dark blood onto the concrete. "I'm sorry, boss, I'm sorry." Min-ho looked up at the two men standing nearby in the dark. "Take him down to the basement. I will deal with him after I eat dinner." The two men grabbed the crying, bleeding guard by the arms and dragged him away quickly toward the dark side of the house. Min-ho turned around. He casually wiped a drop of red blood off the handle of his gun with his thumb, then tucked the weapon back under his white shirt. He walked back up the stone steps and stopped right in front of Ngozi. She was shaking much harder than before. She stared at him like he was the actual devil. He reached out slowly and gently took her bloody, scraped hands in his large, warm hands. His thumbs softly traced the uninjured skin around the cuts. "Nobody disrespects what belongs to me," Min-ho whispered. He looked deep into her terrified eyes. "Now, let's go inside. Mrs. Lee is making dinner."